Hello everybody and welcome back to the Forgotten History of Lewes and Hamsey, Episode 4, 5 Forgotten Things You Need to Know About Lewes and Hamsey. This video will leave you speechless. Let's get into it. Number 1. Lewes and Hamsey were once located by the sea on a tidal estuary, which is why it flooded so badly in the year 2000. Both Lewes and Hamsey had well-documented ports in the past, and Lewes once provided warships for the defence of our southern coastline. There are also visual reminders of this old sea level at the inland sea cliffs by the Coalfell Tunnel. This is also where Cliff High Street in Lewes gets its name. So the seashore is now 7 miles away at Newhaven, and the Ouse is a fairly narrow and rarely used river. So how did this happen? Well, river silting has been the most told and believed story of modern time, but actually sea levels were a lot higher in the Roman warm period, all the way up to around the 1500s when a mini ice age occurred. The Victorians lived through a period when the Thames would freeze over so solidly that markets and bonfires were held on the ice. Not enough ice has melted since this period to bring the sea levels back up again, but it does now seem that they are on their way. Projections of sea level gain do not look good for anyone living in the low-lying flatlands around Lewes, so that would be well worth considering if you do. Number 2. Nobody really knows where the name Lewes originated from. Some good suggestions have been put forward, and one of my personal favourites is Llues, which either refers to the hills themselves or the burial mounds on the hills of the South Downs surrounding Lewes, or maybe both. Anyone that lives in Lewes is probably aware of the incredible amount of barrow burials located all across the South Downs surrounding Lewes, Kingston and all the way over to Telscombe. They range in date from around 3000 BC all the way through to the Anglo-Saxon period of around 1000 AD. The hills around Lewes and Hamsey truly echo with the spirits of the dead. Another suggestion for the derivation of the name Lewes is law, which means a wound or an incision. This is perhaps in reference to the topography regarding the old tidal sea channel which cut its way through the downs all the way up to and through the foot of Lewes, and we actually have a reference to this old name here. Personally, I've always thought that Lewes sounded very much like the French translation for the West. As we know the Normans were here for long periods, who knows, the debate is still open. Number 3. Have you ever noticed that if you adjust the orientation on a map of Lewes and remove anything built after the 1600s, it looks amazingly like a bird? Well, why would that be? Is it a fluke? Well, maybe not. My theory is that the Romans did it when they first arrived here and began laying out the borders of the town. Current archaeological opinion is that the Romans had little presence in this area, but this is simply not true. I'm certain that much of the evidence hasn't been discovered yet or is buried deep underneath the modern town, but plenty has been discovered and also documented. And I'm now going to show you something that proves the likelihood of a large Roman presence here beyond doubt, and this is undeniably ridiculously obvious to see. We have a well-documented Roman road that ends right here at South Malling, and just here was once a Roman villa. Many Roman burials are present here, here and here. A Roman fibula was discovered on top of Malling Hill here. Roman settlements have been proposed as being sited here, here and here by the HER, and many other references also speak of this. This Roman road here is documented as being one of 3 of the major Roman highways of the time by a well-known Anglo-Saxon archaeologist of Sussex called M.G. Welsh. This is in a book called Early Anglo-Saxon Sussex, printed in 1983. So here is the question nobody seems to have considered. Why does this major Roman road end here and not extend further onto the coast? Well, we already know the answer. Hamsey was by the sea on a tidal estuary in the Roman warm period, so it's very likely to be one of the first Roman ports in Britain, long before it continued its use as a port for the Anglo-Saxons. It has not been confirmed yet, but I now suspect that Hamsey was a place first called Ipwinesfleet that then became a place known as Mercredesburn. I also believe that the old coastline near Kingston was a place called Simmonshaw. If archaeologists want to find physical proof to confirm this, I think it is right here and should be incredibly simple to confirm. I'm now fairly certain that in its previous incarnation, before this embankment here became a railway bridge for the old Lewes to Uckfield railway line, it was the wall that Severus built in the year 189, referenced in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which went from sea to sea and was for the defence of the Britons, who we know were living further upstream along the banks of the river. An interesting and fairly large Roman villa site at Barkham has also been discovered in recent years. The historical and archaeological possibilities in and around Hamsey are utterly staggering and have been completely ignored. I can only speculate that perhaps this is due to a misjudgment of scale with relation to the early Roman occupation of Britain and its subsequent height of power. Number 4. King Aethelstan, one of the most important kings in British history, is known to have held his court at Hamsey at least once in the year 925. Lewes and the surrounding areas of Sussex were some of the most densely populated areas during the Anglo-Saxon period, and was so important that Lewes had not one but two mints, and was at that time one of the most important places in Britain. I strongly suspect that it was considered to be the capital of Mercia during these times, and that King Aethelstan was made king in Kingston above Lewes and not in Kingston upon Thames. The reference we have is Ciningeston, which translates only directly as Kingston. It is also interesting to note that the river from this point at Hamsey and all the way further inland was once named the Midwind or the Middle Winder. So why would that be? Well, it was called this because the Midwind cut its way through what was considered to be the centre of Britain in the Roman and Anglo-Saxon period, and obviously this makes this site incredibly important. Number 5, and this is a good one. There's a local legend that tells of Hugh de Payne, the original leader of the Knights Templar, visiting Lewes. It is also thought that the Knights Templars' Church of the Holy Sepulchre once stood on Albion Street in Lewes, and pleas to do archaeological digs in this area have been made in the recent past. This is also little known, but there is a possibility that King Henry III, during the Battle of Lewes, subscribed the help of the Templars to fight with him against Simon de Montfort. The story goes that King Henry's association with the Knights Templar led de Montfort to capture some of Henry's knights. He then dressed them up in Templar uniforms and displayed them in front of Henry's army. The Battle of Lewes is also referenced in old Templar records, which still survive to this day. Now, it is also little known, but this same King Henry III granted vast tithes of land in Sussex to a man called Geoffrey de Say, who then in turn granted the Knights Templar all of their lands in Sussex. Now, William de Say was Geoffrey de Say's son, and the records regarding his ownership of Hamsey Port at the time of the Templars' late existence still exist today. We also find that the very first rector recorded at Hamsey Church was a man called Peter de Melendenis, who I've discovered was a prominent Knights Hospitaller and witnessed many court hearings of the Knights Templar at their preceptory in Selborne, all of which is well documented in this book. It is also interesting to note that this same Peter de Melendenis is a direct descendant of Roger de Melendenis, the Grand Master of the Hospitallers. King Philip arrested the Templars on trumped-up charges in 1307 in a dawn raid on Friday the 13th in a plan to steal the Templars' wealth and power. Some of the Templars attained prior knowledge of his plot and escaped to England, and from here were then absorbed into the Knights Hospitallers. King Philip stole their power, but he never found their wealth, and people have been looking for this treasure's possible location ever since. The fleeing Templars escaped France by boat in 1307 and disappeared from history. Peter de Melendenis, Knights Hospitaller, descendant of the Hospitaller's Grand Master and witness to many documented Templar hearings, became rector of Hamsey Church at a time when it was still a flourishing port in 1306, and owned by William de Say, son of Geoffrey de Say, who granted the Templars all of their land in Sussex. Now, if you've watched my other videos and truly understand the possibilities I've already brought to your attention, you'll also now be aware that there is a strong possibility that there is a very large hidden vault, either underneath or in the near vicinity of Hamsey Church. Next week, we'll be looking at these Templar connections in detail. I'll actually show you where this vault under the Hamsey promontory is located, and I will also detail the possibilities for how it came to be there, for what could still be waiting to be found inside, and I will also prove to you that the only physical evidence of this vault's existence was purposely removed sometime between 1894 and 1910.